Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Well, welcome back. It's nice to see all of you again. Today we are going to talk about kind of how to work with the participants that you're working with, the learners, and how to talk to them about different things in Northstar. So we have recently met, but we'll quickly go through an example workflow and then how to talk to people about the assessments, the online practice lessons, and then we'll go through part of the curriculum where I'll be teaching you all. So you just get an idea of some good practices for working with adults and using the curriculum. So you all know that we have 17 assessments and then 2 types of educational material, the self-directed online learning and the instructor-led curricula. And then of course the learner management system. Why do I want to add learners to the learner management system? Why would I want to do that? We talked about this last time. Why do they need to be added to the learner management system? Or what?
So that your reports are more accurate.
Yes, so your reports are
so
more
they
accurate.
can track their progress.
That's right. So they can track their progress. Good. And it's also the only way they can access those practice lessons through the self-directed online learning, through the learner management system. And why would we want to tag?
Because you may want to look for a specific person doing a specific thing. Let's say if this person took Word and you want to gather a report on all the people passing in Word, let's say.
You could do that, yeah. Or all the people that you yourself are working with that have passed Word. Yeah, great. And anyone remember the passing score in Northstar for the assessment?
85.
85%, right, great. And why would I want to proctor?
To make sure they're being honest. So they can
To make
get
sure
certificates.
Yeah, for both reasons. Yep, to make sure they're being honest and so they could get the certificates. Great. All right. So we've talked a lot about what's in Northstar and how to do some things in Northstar. I'm going to quickly just run through a way that many organizations use it, and then you, of course, are going to tweak it to what works for your organization. But a lot of times, organizations will give the assessment as a pre-assessment to determine what someone already knows, and then where there's an opportunity to learn more. And they'll get those results. Based on those results, they'll know what the person needs to practice. And they can either do it in the Northstar online learning, where there's part of the lessons are instructional, where you might have something to read or something to watch. And then part of the practice lessons require you to practice the skill. Or you could do a Northstar class, and the curriculum is also tied to those standards. The standards kind of link everything together in Northstar, which makes it easy to use the practice lessons or the curriculum or both with the assessments. Once someone goes through the educational material, they retake the assessment. Hopefully they pass and get the certificate. So that's kind of a one way you can do the flow. So I wanted to today to look more at how we talk to, the learners, the participants about using Northstar and how we kind of can help guide them through that. So one of the things that sometimes occurs is that when people are asked to take an assessment, especially a pre-assessment, you sometimes get some feedback, pushback, and people will be saying, like, why do I need to take an assessment? Or I don't know any, you haven't taught me anything yet. Why should I take the assessment? And it's important for us to remember that a lot of people have had negative experiences in like the K-12 system. And maybe they were unfairly told that they wouldn't succeed, or that, you know, the expectations for them were lower than warrant, unfairly low. And so assessments were sometimes a punishment in a way, or seen by people as a punishment. And so, it's important. And I've talked to many people who were, teachers blatantly told them, these are people even who have PhDs, that they weren't going to succeed, that they were stupid, that they were, not going to be able to do this. And so there is that background for many people. So when we're talking about an assessment, that might make some people feel like uncomfortable. So what I've found in talking to learners is that how you present the assessment does matter quite a bit. And I like to, one way that many people I've talked to has been successful for them is to say, this, especially the pre-assessment, this is really for me to see what you already know and where there's an opportunity to learn more, so that I do my job and teach you everything that I need to. So kind of putting it on yourself as the instructor, rather than, where you might not know something. It's really more to make sure that I'm doing my job and teaching you everything that is important for you to learn. And that seems to resonate with people. But also talking about how by taking the pre-assessment, you're not going to waste their time by going over material they already know, but you really want to focus on that material where they can learn something. And so that will save their time and energy as well. The other benefit to the learner to taking a pre-assessment is that they will then be able to see their progress, which is very motivational. So they can see when they started out, what they started out with, what their score was. And then as they take time and, put in effort to learn new material, they can see that growth. And that is encouraging, and it, helps people to feel like their time is being used in a way that benefits them. So thinking about that when you talk about the assessments can be really helpful. And when you talk about with learners to the assessments. The assessments just in general, if someone is coming in looking for, like, they're planning to get a job, if they take an assessment, it's a great way for them when they pass to put it on their resume, to talk about it in an interview. If you're working with people who are maybe planning to take a computer-based test, so maybe they are trying to get their GED, and they are, that's an online test. It's an expensive test. It's a long test, and it's very meaningful, right? Northstar is not such a life-changing test, and it's a lot shorter. So if you go into the GED test or a test like that, and it's your first time taking a computer-based test, you're probably nervous about the test itself, but then you're in this unfamiliar environment, which is going to cause more stress. So by practicing a test like Northstar, just by getting the practice of taking a computer-based test, can really help people feel more comfortable in that environment when they go on to a test that's more significant probably in their lives. So those are some reasons why why you'd want to talk to people about taking assessments. And then it's also important to remember that many people, whether they've had bad experiences or not, do have test anxiety. And so my background happens to be, I have a biology major and then a master's in counseling psychology. And what happens when you're feeling anxious is neurotransmitters are kind of flooding your brain and basically helping prevent information from memory flowing to kind of working, what you're working on. And so people tend to do less well on assessments when they're feeling anxious. And there's been a lot of studies on this. I actually was part of a very small one where we had a class who everyone took an assessment. It wasn't Northstar, it was a different assessment. And then half the class got kind of trained in how to reduce anxiety, and half the class did not. And then but no content was taught about the test. No test content was taught. And they took the test again, and the half that had gotten the the anxiety reducing strategies did better just because they had learned those. So some things that you can do to help people if you feel that you're working with are feeling anxious as they take the test, a couple of things. So one thing that really helps and is easy to do is just encouraging people to do a little bit of deep breathing. And sometimes it's called a box breathing, but we'll practice it now. So I'm going to ask you to, we're going to breathe in for 2 breaths, hold for 2 breaths, and then breathe out for 2 breaths. We'll do that twice. So let's breathe in, hold, breathe out. Breathe in, hold, breathe out. And you should feel yourself kind of just feeling a little more relaxed. And that can really help people focus to be in the moment. They're not thinking in their heads or thinking about the breathing. Another thing that people will do is say, name 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you feel, 2 things you smell. And that again gets people to focus, get their attention away from being worried and focus kind of on the immediate environment. Another thing that happens when we're anxious is we often go through what's called negative self-talk. And much of the time this is in our heads, but sometimes you'll hear people say it out loud, things like, oh, I'm going to do terrible, or I don't know anything, or I'm not going to be able to do anything here. And again, when you present the assessment as, we just want to see what you know. And if you don't know anything, that's great, because then we're going to make sure that we cover all that material. You can kind of counter that, with sort of outwardly setting the expectations for the assessment. Wouldn't ask you to be counselors or anything, but just in the way you talk about it can often counteract that negative self-talk. You all work with people a lot. Is there any other tricks that you have to help someone feel more relaxed when they're going to take an assessment? Or even when they first meet you?
Sometimes we just have icebreakers at the beginning of the class. You tell a funny joke, you get them to laugh, or just to introduce one another to each other so that they become more familiar with the class. Or I'll joke about myself, to let them know, I'm no one special, feel comfortable with me. So I'll do that.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Any other tips y'all have?
Piggyback in there. I like, we always do some sort of icebreaker that includes introductions. Sometimes it'll be describe also how you feel today according to the weather, or something like that, or to also, maybe if it's playing off a theme of if it's like Valentine's Day or Christmas, like what's your favorite present, or your best, just to get them involved and engaged and thinking about something that's personable to them.
Right. Great. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Sometimes I as a retired theater teacher, of course, we played theater games and icebreakers, and also I talk about past things that I've gone through. And I thought about when you said that how some people have had negative things that happen or been said to them. I was told when I was in college, when I first went, I think it was my 3rd year, that I wanted to be a teacher, but I was told I would never be because I wasn't smart enough. And I ran into that professor after my third year of teaching and say, how you doing? This is my third year teaching. So I share stories like that. And even as
Yeah.
like I was theater background, so even most embarrassing moments, I would share those and just have them laughing, just so that they can loosen up.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I have heard from many people, especially people who are Black, that they have had negative experiences in school, like just really mean things that teachers were saying. And I have not had those experiences, so it is unfair. And I would imagine very hurtful and kind of stays with you. So yeah, I think being able to talk to people about being supportive to the students that you're working with is just very, people are probably nervous to be in that education type situation. So being welcoming and like you said, kind of ice breaking and funny also is going to make people feel like they belong in that situation. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing that. All right. So as a reminder, everything in Northstar is written at a 4th grade reading level. If you are familiar with these tests, you know what these scores mean. If not, you probably don't care. And this would be kind of a intermediate. So someone who for them Spanish or English wasn't their first language, they'd be reading at a level where they could read a couple of paragraphs, and speaking at a, they could get their ideas across, but maybe not as fully as they would want to. It's kind of the reading level that it's written at. And then we have a great comment in the chat about no, not great, but Bridget said when she was in school for engineering, she had a professor tell her that she would never make it, that it was swimming with 2 bowling balls. That's terrible. Wow. So hopefully you also ran into that professor and said, look at me now. Good. All right. So there are times though when an assessment really is going to be too stressful. If someone's English or Spanish language level is very low, the Northstar assessments is just going to be frustrating because they won't, it'll be hard for them to get through. Or if their digital literacy level is very low, like if they've never used a smartphone or a computer, it might be best just to start out with instruction. We do have some screeners that are in your Northstar admin portal that are paper and pencil that are much easier to translate if that's something, that someone on your staff is speaking the language that the student is speaking. And just I'm seeing, it'll take a second. My mouse is dying here, so I just want to get it. So pardon me for just 1 second. I do this. Whoops. Struggling. So what I want to show you are the screeners, but I'm trying to plug in my mouse. So there we go. Okay. So so the screeners are in your Northstar admin portal. And let me log in to that. And they're going to be found when we get in there on the resources page. And then you can see a quick way to get there is other resources. You can see right underneath where it says curriculum, or it's also at the bottom of the middle column. And if we go to other resources, we find them at the very bottom. So one of the screeners looks like this. And again, it's a quick way to see, is someone familiar at all with, topics in digital literacy? And you can, if you have someone on staff who speaks the language of the person, then they can more easily translate it than a Northstar assessment, let's say. And then the other one is more of an interactive screener. And this is where you're, again, asking the person to point these things out to you and show you how to turn on a computer and log into a computer. So again, if you have someone who doesn't speak English or Spanish, but they speak a language that one of your staff can translate this into, it's a good way. And just want to make sure you remember that just because someone's reading level in English or Spanish is low, that doesn't mean their digital literacy level is low. I mean, they could be a whiz at the computer and just not know the terminology in those two languages. So, you know, just keeping that in mind. All right, so we talked about that if you're going to be giving an assessment, you would, as we mentioned, want to add the learner to the learner management system. You would need a device and an internet connection, and then headphones. I would highly recommend if you have other people sitting around. And we talked about, and I think we talked about this. I have been training about 4 different groups these 2 weeks. So if we didn't talk about it, please let me know. I think we talked about where you can, that you would want to bookmark your site-specific launch page on all the computers in your organization. And the place to find it, in case you forgot, is again in your Northstar admin portal. And you're going to go to that landing page. It's always on the landing page where, you know, yours has the name of your organization. And here it's the second bullet point. And this is the URL. This long URL is mine. You can also find it in the assessments tab. If you think assessments, I'm giving an assessment, that makes it, in my mind, that's how I remember. And so you just take this whole thing and you would bookmark that or provide a link. So when someone's taking an assessment with you, you always want to make sure that the name of your organization and whatever contact information you have, but more the name of your organization is there before they take it. If it's not, then they're on the free version and you won't capture any of that information. So you want to make sure that is there. And then you would want them to log in. And so it should say, I'm already logged in, but they would be given the option to log in. And so you should also see their name. So those 2 things you want to make sure that you have. And then if you are going to proctor, remember that however you do the proctoring, it should say, right now it says no proctor available, but it should be that green band that says you are proctoring or something like that. So those are the 3 things you always want to make sure that the learners are looking for, or that you are looking for: name of your organization, their name, and then if you're doing proctoring, that it's green. So when we ask someone to take an assessment, some people will, you know, as if you probably remember from when you took it, you go in, you can test your audio or you can skip it, and then there was an orientation video. Some people will just go ahead and take the assessment without watching the orientation video and they'll be fine. Some people will want to watch the orientation video. And then there'll be some people who are either maybe because of their digital literacy level or their reading level, or maybe they're just a little nervous, will want some kind of hand-holding from you and some orientation. And so I'm going to show you this using the assessment, but really what I'm showing you is how to talk to people about digital literacy. So how to work with adults on digital literacy and how to remember that for those of us who have been using computers for a while, we often forget what it's like to not know these things. And sometimes we just, in forgetting, will assume that people know certain steps or understand certain things when they don't. And for them, that can make them feel even kind of like, oh, I really don't know anything. I'm never going to learn that. So we're going through this exercise so I can show you the assessments and the different navigation buttons in it, but also as a way to get you to think about all the things we take for granted when we have been using computers for a while that someone who's new may not know. So I'm going to go into the basic computer skills, and I'm going to skip the cello music. I'm going to skip the orientation. So when someone starts, it tells them what assessment they're taking and how many questions there are going to be. and then they're gonna start. Oh, I'm gonna share my sound here just a second. So when they,
Click on the desktop computer.
they'll hear the audio. One thing that I have heard many times from people until I started to change how I did this is that people will say, wait, I didn't hear what she said. I need to write that down. And they'll get really flustered because they maybe weren't ready to hear the audio. When I tell them before they start that the words she says are written on the page in the upper left-hand corner, that makes people feel a lot better because then they know, okay, the words are there. I can always read them as she's talking. And so that does help people feel not quite as rushed or anxious. The other thing is if someone is newer to digital literacy and specifically to the Northstar assessment, their eyes, I mean, there's a lot going on this screen. If you just think about if you had never heard sound and suddenly you hear it, and then there's all this sound that we kind of filter out, right? We know what sound to pay attention to and whatnot. Same thing with the screen. There's a lot going on here, but if you're new to it, you may not know what's important. And so people tend to notice to focus on the pictures, right in the middle. This gold not proctoring is also kind of stands out. But if you want to kind of start, if they're new to digital literacy and you want to kind of start teaching them some things even before they take the assessment, but sort of in the guise of taking the assessment, you can start talking about what the navigation buttons do. And this is a really good way you're teaching digital skills. So because these navigation buttons are often seen in many programs, and you are establishing that connection that you all were talking about, whether you do this with your whole class or one-on-one, and that conversation. This is also a really great way to think about digital resiliency and talk about it. And I don't actually know if I mentioned that before, but digital resiliency is the concept that you can never teach someone every single thing in the digital world. It's just impossible. There's too much and it keeps changing. And sometimes learners that are new to digital literacy, especially new to computers, they think, okay, I was taught Word. I can do Word, but I can't do Google Docs because no one taught me that. But we know that that's not how the world works. You don't usually get a class on everything. And so what we want to be saying out loud to students is that in this case, so let's look at, this menu button. Here's a menu button. You'll see it in many places. It will do something similar. And to actually say that though, and to say, or even to talk about, let's say you're teaching them how to use Zoom for class. You might say, well, we can use Zoom for class. How else could you use this in your life? So thinking about how certain things could be transferred across platforms or programs, as well as situations. And having even the learners kind of brainstorm it is a great way, again, to get that talking going and getting people interacting. So as we look at this, the other thing to remember, and I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I definitely have, is I might be looking at a new, program or something, and I'm having someone from IT on the phone help me solve some problem. So I'm looking at something I've never seen, and they're saying, well, you just click on the blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I can't even find it because I'm not used to this screen. So remembering that it's important to someone who hasn't seen this before to give directions on where to look, just like you would, when someone's driving somewhere, give them directions on what to look for. Same thing on a screen. And we have several things that we can use, right? We have up and we have down, we have left, we have right. We can talk about the color of things, the shape of things, where they're located. So these are all, and of course you can always point to something. You know, if you're right next to the person or if you're showing it on the screen, you can circle it. And the reason I ask you to think about the directions is more just, again, to remember that if I said, well, you click on the speaker button to turn off the sound. Well, someone who's new to digital literacy may have no idea what a speaker button looks like, right? So we want to think about how can we describe these in ways that people will remember. Whereas if I say, you know, if I point to this or I circle this, I say, okay, this is where you're going to turn on and off the audio. I'm showing you, but I'm not helping you remember as well as if I say, you know, we're going to look for something that well, that's a hard one, but it kind of looks like a hat on its side, or I don't know. What do you see there? I always find this harder to, I'm trying to make it bigger, but I can't really. If I turn this off, I can. Here we go. How would you describe that shape or where it's located or color?
Are you at? I would say something that's white that has a couple lines, like a triangle,
Yeah.
squarish triangle
Mhm.
with a couple lines next to it.
Yeah, great. Anyone else? I love how people describe this shape.
I would say on the right side, it looks like a horn and has
Looks like
a horn and with 2 or 3 um, half round shapes on the outside of it.
great. Yeah.
Theresa, if I can add, so if you use Google Chrome a lot, we would have the Google apps. And so this isn't your specific example, but I would often tell them to look for the Rubik's Cube because the symbol for Google Apps looks a lot like that. And
Yeah.
so from a computer IT perspective, since that's my job in support,
Yeah.
I'm relating a lot to what you're saying right now because you never assume anyone's experience. And I often will tell people, I apologize if I'm being very basic, especially specifically with a new person.
Yeah.
But everyone has different skill levels. And so I always start at the beginning. And so they can warn me off of starting too low and say, well, I already know, yeah, I understand. And then other people just follow exactly what I'm saying. And they go, oh, yeah, you know what? The Rubik's Cube, I like that. But
Yeah, no, that's a great. And it is true that you won't know maybe what someone's skills are, and it's part of that um connection that you're making with them, like the journey together. Like, okay, even if they say, "Oh, I know this," they're realizing that you're there, and you're going to help them. So if they don't know something, you know, you're like, all right with explaining it. So that's good. Thanks for that, sharing that. So for some reason, this looks really fuzzy. So in looking at these navigation buttons, we can think about how we might describe something, what it looks like, where it is on the page. So you said, you know, the lower right-hand corner, it's a white shape, and talked about the different things it looks like. So those are really great to kind of, again, if someone's new and you just want to give them a tour of the navigation buttons before they even take the assessment, that's a great way to set them up for success so that they're feeling more comfortable once they get to it. We have the I don't know button on the bottom center. Why is that a good thing? Let's say I'm taking the assessment. Why is that a good thing for me to use?
It flags a question so that they can go back if they don't have an answer when they go to submit their test. It'll prompt them and say, you haven't answered these questions, and it will allow them to go back.
That is true. They can always go back. And what if they still don't know?
is it for comfort? Sort of like putting them at ease that they don't have to make the selection?
Yep, but definitely they can choose the answer can be, I don't know. And why do we want them to choose that?
Help us
Because
get
it shows us
Oh, sorry.
oh, I'm sorry. It shows us where they may need some assistance. It gives us an assessment as to direct help that they might need.
Yeah, right, exactly. So if I don't know, but I guess, I could guess right. And then you would think that I actually do know, and you may not cover that information. So if someone doesn't know, we would rather understand that and not take the chance that they guess right, but not actually know and not teach it. So I always would say to students that this is your, I don't know is your friend. If you don't know, choose that, and then we'll make sure to cover it.
Does it on the assessment results, does it show you that they clicked I don't know, or does it just show up as being incorrect?
It would show up as being incorrect.
Okay.
Mhm. But to your point earlier, if they do, if someone at any point wants to go back and change an answer or change it from I don't know to, sometimes as you go through the assessment, you realize, oh, wait, actually, I do know. The menu button, which is the 3 lines with the 3 dots in this blue square on the top upper right, this lets you go back and change your answer. So you can't skip ahead. So I couldn't go from question 1 to question 6. But if I was on question 6 and I thought, oh, you know what, actually, I think I do know that first answer, I could click on question 1 and go back. So again, the I don't know is, it is true that it is a placeholder that you can always go back, or even if you choose an answer, you can always go back and change it. So until you hit that submit button, all answers can be changed. Some of the other navigation buttons I just want to make sure you are aware of is on the bottom right, the CC here stands for closed captioning. And you might say, well, the words are already there. Why would they need the words? And that is true in the basic, in some of the early kind of basic assessments. All the words she says are on the screen. In some of the higher level ones like career search skills, there's more audio and the words just kind of encapsulate what the audio has said, but it's not every single word. So if they want to see every single word because of maybe for whatever reason, they can do closed captioning. The speaker next to that just turns on and off the audio. So I can mute it and it turns with an X, and then if I click it again,
Click on the desktop computer.
Back on. Another helpful thing for people who are not used to digital interfaces is the 2 arrows on the bottom right. These are the expand screen arrows, and they, I think you can see on my screen all the tabs I have on the top open. So there's a lot going on my screen, right? And you kind of just ignore it because you're focused on what we're looking at. But again, for someone who is new to digital literacy, that's a lot of noise that they may not know to ignore. So if you click on the arrows, then you just get the assessment. So it's a lot cleaner and easier to focus on. The last navigation button I want to show you is next to the menu button that we looked at, this blue square with the speaker, or as we said, it looks like a horn with 2 lines or a kind of a triangle with 2 lines and the backward arrow. This will replay the audio. So you can hear the audio as many times as you want. And then you see that it brings up this rectangle that has trying to get rid of the play audio. It has a 1X in it. And if I click on the 1X, I can speed it up. So if I want to speed up the audio from what it was recorded at, I click on the 1X. And if I want to go even faster, I click it again. So it's 1.5 times as fast. And if I want to go even double, I click it again. So I can go twice as fast if I feel the audio is too slow. If I want to slow down the audio, I can do that, but it's like on a wheel. So you have to go through the faster to get to the slower. So once I get to 2X, if I click on it again, then it's slower than what it was recorded at. So unfortunately, you just have to kind of go around. But that can be helpful for people who it's either too slow or too fast for. The last thing I wanted to show you about in these assessments is that, I know. If you are, helping someone and you're going through this with them or your class, and you're kind of spending time going over just the navigation of the assessments, getting people used to it, When they take the assessment, invariably someone will ask you to help. Not because they're trying to cheat or, pull something over on you, more because they see you as someone who has been helpful to them, and they're just thinking that you're going to continue to be helpful to them. And of course, we're all in this profession because we like helping people. So sometimes it's hard to not. But the assessment is not about your skills, it's about their skills. So you don't want to help them answer the question. And the questions I get will be more like, well, what does desktop mean? Or do you think I should pick this one or this one? Or which of these do you think is the right answer? And so I will just always say, it's all right if you don't know. You can use that I don't know button, and then we'll be sure to cover it when we do the teaching. And you can always help them with the navigation buttons. If they say, how do I turn off the sound again? You can help them with that. But, we don't want to help them with the assessment. Any other thoughts that you all have about walking people through the assessments if need be? So the assessment, there is no time limit on it. Someone can take as long as they want. If they get up and leave and there's no activity on the page, then it will just turn off and they will lose what they've done. Or someone asked me this, what if the power goes out? Will they be able to resume? The answer is no. So if the internet is lost, they'll have to start over. Any specific assessment, so like basic computer skills, an individual can take up to 2 times in one day. And the idea there was that they could take it as a pre-assessment, maybe do the practice lessons, and then take it again as a post-assessment and maybe pass, get the certificate. You can't take it more than twice in one day because we didn't want people just taking it over and over and over just to get the right answers. We want people to actually learn the skills. You can take multiple assessments in one day, so different assessments. You could take all 17 if you wanted to. And then you can take again, let's say you took basic computer skills twice today, you could take it again tomorrow. So those are kind of the parameters in terms of what Northstar puts on the assessments. So if we're going to give an assessment remotely, we talked about, again, you'd want to add the learner to learner management system. You want to make sure for any case that the learner knows their email and password so they can log in. And then they would need to have, if they're remote, a device and an internet connection. And you can share that site-specific launch page in the chat is the easiest way, I think, to do it. But they might be able to go in through your website or however it's showing up. And then we talked about that they can take an assessment through their learner dashboard. So if they're logged in, doing the practice lessons, and they're ready to take an assessment, they can also take one that way. Oh, I did want to show you, and sorry, I forgot this. I want to show you how you can change the language. So if we go back here. If you want to change the language, so here I am on the assessment, and underneath where the no proctor available is showing up, you can see the little globe here and it says language. And so I just click on the drop down arrow, I go to the Spanish, and then you wait, and then everything will be in Spanish, and all the assessments are in Spanish. The audio will be in Spanish, the words will be in Spanish. And then if you want to switch from Spanish to English, you do the same thing. So you just have to remember there's that little pause when it looks like nothing's happening, but it's switching. So when someone takes an assessment, then they get this results page. And there are a few things on here that I want to make sure that just in case you get asked. So you did say that the passing score is 85%. That is true. Sometimes you can see on this particular assessment that this person got 29 out of 34 correct. And sometimes someone will say, well, I got 29 right on the internet, basic internet, and I passed, and I got 29 right on Word and I didn't pass. Why not? And the answer is a mathematical answer. So why would it be that I got 29 on internet basics and passed, and 29 right on Word and did not pass? Any thoughts?
Different number of questions.
Different number of questions. Exactly, right. So it's a percentage, right? So maybe, so this one has 34 questions, maybe Word had 40. Sometimes, it's rare, but it sometimes does happen where someone will say, I got 29 out of 34 on internet basics and passed, but I got 29 out of 34 on career search and did not pass. So same number of questions, same number right. Another mathematical reason why that might happen.
Are questions weighted differently?
Questions are weighted differently, right? So in some questions, there's multiple, there's actually multiple standards being tested, or there's multiple answers, and so you might get partial credit. And so just that rarely comes up, and I probably wouldn't tell students that either of those things unless they asked, but I just want to make sure you all know. And then the other thing that sometimes more is commonly asked is, here you can see that I got standard 5 wrong, right? I got that in the gray column. And sometimes people will say to me, well, question 5, I know I got question 5 right. And they probably did get question 5 right. The important thing to know is that the standards and the questions are not a one-on-one correlation. So sometimes you'll have multiple standards in a question, sometimes a standard might be in multiple questions. And so just so people understand that. Any questions about the results page? As a reminder, if someone wanted to go directly to the practice lessons from here, they could. They could either work on, like in this case, standard 5. I might say, well, I think this is important. I want to learn this. They could go to the barbell where it says practice to the right of standard 5, and we go right to that point in the lesson. And if my score was lower and I wanted to start from the very beginning, I could go up here underneath the plumb bar here where it says go to NSOL, and that would take me to the beginning lesson, the start of the lesson.
Now, Theresa, say that again. So if I was teaching that particular class
Yeah.
and I wanted, to go over the incorrect for all the students.
Yeah,
Is there
so
a way to go over, say for instance, we were going over all 34 and I say, how many got question 1 correct? And say they got 1 through 20 correct, and then someone got to 21. How would I address that particular question? Because I tried to do that.
yeah, I think that's you ask a really great question. And sometimes what I've seen is, so I'll show you all this, but there is so what I wish Northstar had, which it doesn't yet, but I keep pushing for this, is that there would be a report that would show you when you run that sub-report of all the people in that class, every person's name and then all the standards and then what they passed. So you could see a picture of the class, basically, of what you needed to work on. That does not exist in Northstar at the moment. So you have to kind of do it manually. But I want to show you how you can do that. And that then, so what I would do is take the results for each person and create the spreadsheet, and then I could see what I need to teach coming up. And there might be a few students, like you are, definitely the case, or you're saying that some people may not know as much as the rest of the class, and then some people might know a lot more than the rest of the class. And how do you kind of address those different skill levels? So, when you, let me get into the system. So the first thing I would do, I would give the assessment to everybody in the class. And then what I would do is, in the admin portal, you, can see each person's, what they passed and what they haven't. And so what I would do is I would go to the learner tab. So you're thinking learners. And I would run that, I would have created a tag for my class. And so I would run that tag on the, whoever took the, the assessment, the class. And then I'm just gonna look at the active ones. So then I'd get a list of the people in the class, and what you can do is then for each person, let's say the assessment we took was the, oh, let me make sure. I don't know if these are all fake people, so they probably haven't done anything. I'm gonna go to my own so that you can see what this looks like. That will show us some more interesting things. Or not.
You left your tag in.
But yeah, thank you. I thought I'm in there. So what you can do is, I want to see, here we go. So here's one. If I click on this, it would show me for everyone in the class how they did on the assessment and how they did on the practice lessons. But then if I click on the person's name, each person's name, I can go to that assessment. So there's a lot of like clicking around, but I can, I think it was this one. I can click on the I and I can see which standards they've missed. So then I would have my spreadsheet and I would say, even if it's on paper, put an X in each. I'd have the standards on the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The name of the people down the X-axis, and I would put an X in all the standards they missed, so then I could see a picture of where I wanted to focus. Does that make sense? It's kind of labor intensive. But it is kind of
Can that information be exported? Any of that information be exported to a spreadsheet or copied and pasted into one?
Oh, that's a really good question. And actually, let me think. So if we go to the learner tab, yes, you can download where it says download activity. I want to just get a small group here. Yeah, anyone in this? These are all fake, as you can see. So I'm going to download it into a spreadsheet, and it comes as a PDF download. And that's not it, but it's coming up. Okay, so it does tell me the person's name, and then this would only tell me their score on each assessment, so not which ones they got right or wrong. So I think I'm trying to think about this. I think you have to do it, which is why I do want us to create the report. I think you would have to do it manually. One other thing you can see, but it doesn't really tell you each person. It does give you a snapshot of the class, is if you went to the detailed reports, and let's say you were giving an internet basics test, you could view the report. And then it does show you what questions people missed, and then the questions are aligned with the standards, but it's not an exact what we want about the standards. So it's a little a little putsy.
I had also asked, this was kind of like going backwards, but to the I don't know
Yep.
mark, is there any place that's identified that we can track or know that these were marked, these questions were marked? I don't know.
They are not. They would just be included in that gray column. Yeah. So unfortunately, it's kind of a manual process. Once you do see what, what that picture of the class looks like in terms of what standards do they know and what standards don't they know, or where you want to teach, the curriculum itself is helpful in that for each topic, there is a scope and sequence, the first bullet point. And here it will tell you it gives you all the standards here in this third column, are listed here. And then let's say you noticed on, as you did your little spreadsheet or your chart, that standard 7 was one thing that definitely a lot of the class missed. So then you could go over to the last column that says lesson outline and look for the 7, and you find it in lesson 8. So then you can say, okay, lesson 8 is where I want to teach. So it does help you find what you want to teach. And with the practice lessons, it would also list the standards that, it would list by standard. And so you could tell each person, you missed these standards on your results page, they're seeing it, then they could go in and practice those standards themselves if you wanted them to just practice that. So when we're working with someone who, let's say, most of the class knew standards 1 through 10, but there was one person who did not, you could have them work with the practice lessons on their own to kind of get up to speed. Or if someone passed the assessment, they knew everything, and the rest of the class did not, needed to work on it. One thing you can do is each lesson has what's called a unit project lesson, which is always for the bottom here. It is the unit project lesson. And it is involving all the skills that were learned in this topic, but also a couple paragraphs of reading. And you can use this in a couple ways. You can use this as more of an academic exercise. And trying to get this a little smaller so you can see. What it does is it would tell you, what high frequency academic words are being used here, what digital literacy terms. If you wanted to, you can have them go through this in terms of reading comprehension. I don't think that's what your project is about. So if that's not, what you're doing on their own, you would just have them read the paragraph. So the article is Finding Reliable Information Online. So they'd read this. It's a couple pages. It looks like it's 4.5 pages. And this is what it looks like. And then they would take the skills they had learned and what they had just read, and they would do a project, which is outlined here. So, whoops. So the project, after they did the reading, and if we scroll down to the last page, project, is the application. So if you go to the application and they read the article, they've passed the assessment, and then what they're asked to do is this. So it's more of a real world use of those skills. So in this case, they have to find an answer to this question or another question, look at several different websites. Is this a professional website, professional author, based on what they've read, and kind of helps them determine, is this a reliable website or not? So that's something that for those students who are progressing faster, an option you can give them. Another thing that, as we look at the curriculum, that's that's built into the curriculum is there is a section on, it's called Pair Explore. So if we go to, I don't know, let's go here. One of the sections in every curriculum is called a Pair Explore. Let me find it here. So here, if you're finding as you're going through this that some people are getting it quicker than others, you can pair those two up and have them work together. So the person who understands it already gets the option to, opportunity to teach it and understand it better or cement it more. And then the person who hasn't yet mastered it can practice the skill again. So those are some ways to sort of address the differing skills in your class. I don't know if that actually answered your question. It was a very long answer, but that's, I guess, how I would do it. If you're in the classroom and as you said, you're looking through, you're having people raise their hand for each standard, which is, I think, wow, look at that. Let me get back to what I wanted to show you here. You could say, okay, if you miss standard 21, like in your example, they could go to the barbell that's on the right and click on it, and it would take them right to that point in the practice lesson. So in the case of, let's say you're in a class and you want people to work on what they missed, that's one way they could do it in that way. They could also, I would say, if their score was, less than 75%, they probably would want to do the whole lesson. And then they could click on go to where it says NSOL underneath the plum right here, underneath the plum bar. So here, and that would take them to the beginning of the lesson. So that is something, as you're in a class and you are wanting them to kind of first practice on their own, that's a way that you could do that. Does that help at all? Or was it more confusing? Because I kind of feel confused now.
No, that was helpful. So if the instructor was entering in the student, I think I have mine pulled up. Let me go to it. So if I, as an admin and was managing the staff, so really all they should have in is NSOL access, correct?
For the staff?
Well, for a learner.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And actually remember to, I just want to make sure that this is the case. But when, so a staff person, so if you're a Northstar administrator, when you add a staff person in the blue navigation bar, you're adding them through the info link here. And it sounds like you are. So you go to manage staff, click on that, and then, add new staff in the green, and then you choose whatever toggle they want. When you click on staff, it automatically adds the staff person to the NSOL access. Or you can make them a proctor and an admin. When you're adding a learner or a student, you want to add them through the learner tab. And then this is where you would go to invite new learner and then add them here. So just remember that the staff are only added through that info tab, and learners are all added in the learner tab. And then you're right, they would only have access to the Northstar Online Learning, the practice lessons. But you wouldn't want to add learners in here. All right, does that help? All right, so let's look at the practice. Well, let's take a break. It's been an hour and we have 2 hours, which is a long time. So I have that at 6 after the hour. So let's take a 5-minute break to 11 after the hour, and then we'll come back and look at some more of the instructional material. Okay, so I want to spend a little bit of time just walking you around the what am I trying to say? The learner dashboard. And so you can talk to students about that and how you might incorporate the practice lessons if you're with any classes that you're teaching. So just to let you know, this will show up for learners. This first question won't be here. That's because I am enrolled in several different locations. But the second question that says, right now, are you physically at the Northstar location? That will be there unless you decide that you want to turn it off for all students and that your Northstar administrator can do that. And the reason that it breaks it out like that is for time tracking purposes. So if you want to know when they're working on the practice lessons when they're with you in class versus when maybe they're at home or at the library or something, you could do that if you enable this question or if this question is on. So the learner dashboard. Again, if someone is using this, a learner is using this, they might understand it right away. They might want a little orientation. And if they do, underneath the Northstar logo, there you can see it says need help getting started. There are actually 2 videos here that talk about the learner dashboard and the practice lessons. So that's something that's helpful to show learners. You can also find those same videos under the help here in the kind of the middle where it looks like a soccer ball. So whatever you're gonna remember, help button or need help getting started. When they're looking at their dashboard, that outer ring is showing them how well they did on an assessment. So if we look at these 3, Internet Basics, email, and Windows 10, which one did I do the best on?
Email.
Right, the full circle, right? So I got 100%, that outer ring. The inner ring shows me how well I'm doing on the practice lesson, or not how well, how much of the practice lessons I've completed. So which one have I completed the least on? Yep, Windows 10. And then in the middle, you can see there's hexagons in 2, and in Windows 10, there's none. The hexagon means I passed. And if it's in gray, it was not proctored. And if it's in color, it is proctored. So which one was not proctored of these 3 that I passed?
Internet Basics.
Yep, Internet Basics, right. So then the other thing that's going on here, let's look at the email one. You'll see these little circles. And the circles, if you remember, we talked about this a while ago. The way the practice lessons are set up is they'll be divided into several sections, 3 or 4 usually. And each section will have a little quiz, little 3-question quiz that lets someone know they're ready to go on to the next section, or they should go back and review what they just learned. These circles are related to those sections and are letting a person know where they're at in the section. I personally find them a little confusing for learners, and I don't typically mention them unless someone asks me, just because, again, many people are confused by them. But if you look at using email, you can see there are 4 sections in this lesson. And if I hover over the circle, it will tell me what the section is called. So one of the sections is following email etiquette. One is understanding email, one is sending and receiving email, and one is about managing email safely. They look like they're located in specific spots on that ring to me, but they're actually not. They're sort of like separate from the ring itself. And what the icons mean is that if you see a locked icon, it means that I haven't gone through all the lessons in this section yet. So I haven't looked at every standard that's in this section. If I see a lock that's unlocked, it means that I have looked at all the material, all the lesson material, but I have either just not taken the quiz or I didn't pass the quiz. And then if I see the check mark, it means I looked at all the lesson material and I took the quiz and I passed the quiz. So again, I feel like it's a little too much information for learners, but so depending on the learner, you can decide if you want to use it or not. If then they click on the word lessons, we'll go over here. They can then, here's where they can see what they have to work on. So if they go to, well, first up here, you see the rings again, and then the barbells where it says start practice. This will be start at the beginning of the lesson or wherever they left off. So they can do 5-10 minutes, whatever they want to do one day, then come back and it will have saved their progress. Each lesson, if you went through the whole thing, takes about 90 minutes. If they go to the standards tab, they can see what standards they missed when they took the assessment, and then they can also see if they've done the practice for it or not. So in this case, if there's just a few standards they've missed, I would go to where, yeah, you see I missed standard 9. I would go to where the barbell says practice and I would click on that and cover that material because there's just a few things I need to learn. If I had missed a lot, I would probably just start at the beginning of the lesson. You, though, can use this, so you can tell people that they should practice, work on the standards or the whole lesson, depending on how they've done. But another way you can use this in conjunction with, if you're teaching material in a class, is if you go to the practice tab, the bolded uppercase words, those are those section headings. And then the bullet points, these are the standards. And so you might say, well, let's say someone missed a class. And you could say, well, yesterday in class, we worked on this standard, demonstrate ability to scroll up and down a page. So I want you to go, work on the practice lessons on your own so you can catch up with the class. Or perhaps last week, you went over how to fill out an online form. And at the beginning of class, you have everyone spend 5 minutes just reviewing that in the practice lessons. You can also use this, as we kind of discussed, if someone is a little bit behind the rest of the class, as a way for them to practice, learn the material and catch up to what's being taught in the class. And you can also, if someone ever wants to go back and get a refresher, maybe they went over this and passed it, and then a few months later they wanted to fill out a government form and they forgot how to do that, they could come back and practice fill out an online form. And it would be as long as you have access to Northstar and they are in your system, they could access it. Oh, and the other way you can use this is, let's say in the class, you spent the class time on, how to identify and work with tabs and windows. You can then ask everyone to, as homework, to go to the practice lessons and review that material. So from home or, somewhere, if they had a device and an internet connection. So that's how you can integrate the practice lessons with the curriculum. You can use both of them separately, but they teach the same skills, the same standards, but in different ways. So depending on the person who's learning the material, they might prefer one way or another, or it might be just good reinforcement. So when you go to the practice lessons, you'll see that they look a lot like the navigation buttons look a lot like the assessments. And so here you'll
In
have
a web browser, you can have multiple websites open.
You'll have the audio. You can see that there are some instructional pieces that they read, some that are videos, kind of like this. You can have this closed caption if it's a video embedded in here. And the way to do that is you want to go to your closed captioning in the video. So you can do closed captioning for the Northstar audio at the bottom right-hand side of the screen where we saw it on the assessment. But for the embedded video, you want to use the YouTube closed captioning. So just in case someone needs to use that. The other main difference is, well, the other two differences are that in the menu, you can go backwards and forwards. So if I'm on staying organized, but I want to go back to, I want to go look at the using websites, I can jump backward. So you can go forward and backwards in the menu. And then of course we have the next button instead of the I don't know, which it just advances the slide. The other thing that are in the practice lessons is you can see here near the Northstar logo, there's a barbell that says try it. So there'll be the instructional piece, but then there's always practice. And our philosophy is just that you can't really learn digital skills through instruction alone. You have to actually get in there and practice. So whenever someone sees a barbell, that means that they're going to have to do something on the page. And so you can see here, I haven't done anything, and it's kind of helping me out by flashing. So the question is to find the highlighted hyperlink that says find location. And now it's kind of flashing to say, hey, here it is. And so then I click on that. And then it says, you saw the green check to say, hey, yeah, you got that right. So there's kind of a lot of reinforcement in there and some help in there. The point of the practice lessons is for practice. And even if someone takes that quiz and doesn't get it right, often Northstar itself will give hints as to the right answer, or even say the right answer. Again, trying to teach rather than determine if someone knows the material. That's the assessment, not the quizzes. Any questions about any of this, the practice lessons, or how you might use them? You can use them for yourselves too. I mean, I definitely have learned things myself by going through the practice lessons. And so I take the assessments and then see where I don't know something, and then I go through the practice lessons.
Theresa, I do have one question. I've been teaching with Northstar for a while now. And one thing I haven't been able to determine, like I'm just not real consistent. It tends to trip my students up. I tell them not to worry about it, but when you're going through the practices like this, and you take the section quizzes, the questions for your review, in the drop-down menu on the right-hand side, you'll see an exclamation mark. Does that mean that they missed it in that section or in the review questions?
That they missed it in the review questions.
Gotcha.
Good question. So what she's talking about is when in the review question, see over here on the right-hand side of the bottom part of my screen, the green check means they got the question right. The kind of red-orange exclamation point means they got it wrong. Okay. Yes. So that's what that means. And then I should also say that, the quizzes, if someone asks for help on answering the quiz question, or they don't understand why they got it wrong, you can tell them that this is for learning. So unlike the assessment, definitely you can guide people to the answer, or even tell them the answer and why it's the answer. This is all about the learning process.
Yeah, a lot of times I just sit beside them and say, okay, so I don't want you to get frustrated. So before you click, tell me what you're doing. Explain to me what you're doing. And a lot of times I think it's that they click too quickly and it reads that first click. But they actually are clicking correct like the second time. And I don't know that it's reading all of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So maybe they're accidentally clicking on a place they don't want to be clicking. Yeah, that's actually a good moment to practice that. Like, all right, take a deep breath before you click, make sure you move the mouse, before you do that. And that's also going to help with the assessment once they ultimately get to that point. right, good. All right, well, I do want to show you a little bit of the curriculum, if you haven't, the instructor-led curriculum. The other thing I do want to say, another hint is if they are in the practice lessons or on the second page of the learning of the dashboard and they want to get back to that first page, it's a little hidden, but if they click on the Northstar logo, it goes right back. So they don't have to keep like, where'd that dashboard go? They can just do that and it goes right back to the dashboard, which makes it a little easier. All right, so I want to take this last half hour to talk about the instructor-led curriculum. And we'll go through it a little bit. I obviously don't have time to do the whole thing. But one thing that I make sure I do is when I teach this, is that I print out or have another screen of the teacher guide. Because the teacher guide does like walks you through everything, all the words to say, tells you what you're gonna show when. And I'm looking for my teacher guide at the moment. You aren't going to want to be showing all that information to the students. It's going to be, too much information for them, but you're going to want to have it near you. So what the teacher guide for every lesson, if you haven't seen it, looks like, the first page anyway, looks like what's going to come up on my screen here. No, it doesn't look like that. It looks like if I go into, so I'm going to go into curriculum. Let me actually kind of cover some of this material. So here you can see on the right where it says language. Here, if I wanted to teach this in Spanish, I could switch it to the Spanish language and all those that are now translated into Spanish would show up for me. Then we have these bullet points, and they are actually some helpful information in here. So I will say that the Northstar curriculum is pretty easy to use, but if you want kind of the background on why did we include all the different components and how to best use each component, the teacher guide would go over that. The next two bullet points are if you're going to be doing remote teaching or have a virtual class, it gives you guides for that. And the sample agenda here, if you love checklists, it's just a checklist of what do you need to do before the class? What do you need to do during the class? And I get often asked, do you have a kind of a topic around Zoom? And we don't have a specific assessment or curriculum around Zoom, but this is one place where you can practice those skills. So you can see here it talks about how to practice using the camera, how to practice doing muting in the chat box. So it gives you some ideas if you are going to be using a video conferencing platform, it doesn't have to be Zoom, how to introduce that to learners. And then the other place that you can have people learn about, again, Zoom or something similar, is this fourth bullet point. It says entry-level digital skill building video tutorials. So these were topics that we got asked about a lot that we didn't feel were big enough for a unit, but definitely people were wanting to know how to teach it. So these are actual videos, and they're 5 to 7 minute videos created for learners to learn these skills. And then there's a worksheet that goes along with it and a teacher answer key. So you can check for comprehension. And I will say that the ones that are most commonly used, I believe, are Zoom, smartphone apps, and Gmail. But you can use any of them. And so this is a good like mini lesson if you want a little mini lesson on any of these topics. Then the last bullet point, I don't know that you are in this spot, but these are routines to build into just a regular classroom for especially in this case learning English language learning, to kind of get used to practicing those digital skills. But it's intended for people who are either low-level digital literacy learners or lower level literacy learners. And it can help, you know, especially for people who maybe English or Spanish isn't their first language, to even make Northstar or make it easier than Northstar. So if you are working with people in that category, these routines they're basically PowerPoint slides that you can edit. And so we've given you some pictures and some words and some ideas of how to go about it on the slides, but then you can switch it to be what's more applicable to the students you're working with. So those are some extra resources. Underneath that, in these 3 boxes, this is the actual digital literacy Northstar curriculum. And I showed you that every one starts out with a scope and sequence. There are some alignment maps. So if you want to know how it relates to college and career readiness standards, this ACES Transition Integration Framework alignment map, very long name. This is what's used in Minnesota, but they're really soft skills or job place skills. So if you want to see how what you're teaching in Northstar aligns with those, this would show you that. Then we have all the lessons, that unit project I was telling you about. And then at the very bottom, we'll have all of the resource, all of the handouts, all the slides that you're showing. And if you're doing this remotely, then you don't have to kind of skip through the practice lessons. They're all there in one spot, or not the practice lessons, I'm sorry, through the curriculum that you're looking at in the instructor guide. This would just show what students need to see on your screen. So I want to take a look at this next, I want to kind of go a little bit through the lessons and how you might use them. So every lesson starts out with a lesson, you know, with this page, this teacher guide, and it would tell you what the lesson, you know, what the topic is using email, what lesson number, lesson 7, what it's about, spam and phishing. In the upper left-hand corner, it tells you what standards are going to be taught. And then in the right-hand corner, it tells you the vocabulary. And as you'll see, I always like to go over the vocabulary at the beginning of a lesson, because these are words that we're going to be explicitly teaching in the lesson. So we want people to recognize them, hear them, and be a little familiar with them. So as we go through them in the lesson, they're taking notice of them. Then, and we'll go over that in a second. And then the technology concepts, this will tell you kind of what the objectives of this lesson are about in instructor language, but also give you any teaching tips. So in this case, as part of the lesson, you're going to be showing spam or phishing examples. So you can either pull those from your own spam folder, or as they say, you can pull it from, you know, search on the internet for examples, but that you want to make sure that they're appropriate before you actually show them in class. And then it's also telling you that, you know, a spam folder is sometimes called a junk folder, depending on what email provider you're using. So just so that you and the students are aware of whatever one you're looking at, what's called. The second half of this page, I just broke it into 2 so you could see it better. But this tells you what you need to make copies of. If you're doing it remotely, you can click on the links to show them what you might need to do beforehand so that you're ready for the class. So now we're going to go through a little bit of this, and I'll be the instructor and you all will hopefully be the learners, and kind of talk through the different parts of it. So I do like to start out with the vocabulary, and I just crossed out hover because we're not going to cover that part as I'm talking to you. But what I like to do is, and I have found, and maybe you found this or maybe not, but then when teaching digital literacy, I found that people really like to keep all the handouts, to have a notebook to write things down, and to practice even saying the words out loud. So I'll have them write down each word, and then we'll say it out loud. And so you can see that, for example, this first word, right? Someone might hear the word fishing and not realize it's spelled this way. So it's good to have both the sound and the spelling. If this is someone for whom English is not their first language or Spanish is not their first language, when we are teaching multi-syllabic words, so I should back up and say that Northstar is part of Literacy Minnesota, and we've been teaching adults literacy for 50 plus years. So some of these tricks come from that background, or teaching, I don't know if they're tricks, but ways of teaching. So one thing that does help people is if you clap out the syllables, and that helps people hear where the break is, and it's not one kind of long word. So if you are working with people for whom the language you're teaching in is not their first language, that can be helpful. So we're going to practice that. You don't have to write down the words, but if you would unmute and repeat after me when we say the words. So go ahead. Okay. So the first word we're going to learn is fishing. Fishing.
Fishing.
Fishing.
You can
And the
repeat that.
second word is reputable. Reputable.
Reputable.
Great. The third word is spam.
Bam.
And the fourth word is suspicious. Suspicious.
Suspicious.
Great. And then the last word is virus. Virus.
Virus.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. So then the lessons always start out with a warm-up, just like you were talking about in your classes, how you get people talking. Here are some kind of guided warm-up questions that you can use if you want to, and they pertain to the topic that's being taught. So I'm going to make it a little bigger. So what we're going to do is, again, I just took out one of the questions because of time. But what I want us to do here is to imagine that we're answering these questions in a world where there are no computers. So before computers were invented, that is the world we're imagining ourselves to be in. And in that world, how would you keep information like your credit card number or your social security number or your credit card itself safe from someone who should not have it? So how could I keep my credit card number, make sure that someone who I don't trust or shouldn't have my number, how do I keep my credit card number safe?
Put it in a safe with a lock.
Yep, could have been in a safe with a lock. What if I don't have a safe?
You can put it just in a safe space where it's not seen or not used.
Right, so maybe hide it under my mattress or in my underwear drawer or something. Yep. What if I had written down my credit card number on a piece of paper and I then didn't need that piece of paper anymore? What should I do with that?
Burn it.
Burn it. Yep. I think I heard shred it. What
Mhm.
else could I do to destroy it?
Tear it up.
Tear it up. Yeah. Any other? I'd like to hear the creative ways people can destroy paper. Someone said eat it once.
Soak it in water.
Soak it in water. Oh yeah, that's a good one. All right. So let's say again that we still live in this world without computers. And I moved to a new town and I needed to do some shopping. How could I decide if a business is reputable, meaning that I can trust them with my credit card number?
Ask around town.
Yeah, I could ask maybe my new neighbors or at the library. Any other thoughts of how I could decide if a business is reputable?
You can always ask the business how they handle the information.
Well, that's a good idea. Ask the business.
You can start out with a small purchase or
You could start.
use them.
like not spend $1,000, but spend 10 or something. Mhm. Does anyone remember what people used to look up in the days before computer, what they used to look in to find a business?
Yellow pages.
Yeah, the yellow pages, right?
True, true.
Or the
Mhm.
Better Business Bureau, I guess you could call.
Yeah, you can find associations that they might be with.
Yeah, right. Or if it's a like a chain that you had already shopped at in your old town, you know, you probably could feel like you could trust them in the new town. So the reason I ask you to imagine this world without computers, I wouldn't ask that of students, is because based on their answer, if they're answering like this, you know, they're not using their credit card online yet. So it lets you as instructors see where they're at and kind of what they're experiencing. And then also lets you create that bridge from what they do know to what you're going to teach them. So you could say, well, just like you have to keep your credit card, you know, hidden in your purse and safe, you also have to do that if you're entering it online, the number online. So it's a way for people to just start talking and, you know, that warm up, but also lets you as an instructor kind of see where they're at. So then the next piece in any lesson is this we will learn piece. And these are the objectives written in student-friendly language. And as you've probably, you know, encountered, most adults they like to know what they're going to learn and how it's relevant to them. And again, I will say that when I first taught this, I thought, I'll just write these on the board. We'll go over them. It'll take like 20 seconds and we'll be done. Not the case at all. The students wanted to write these in their notebooks. They wanted to read these aloud as a class and talk about any words that they didn't understand. So it actually became this kind of really nice way to start each lesson because people were really engaged and wanting to know what we were going to learn in that day. Another thing that can help if someone is learning, you know, again, if they're not speaking the language that the class is being held in, or even if their maybe reading skills are a little lower, one thing that helps a lot when hearing a different language, especially, is like if I think about trying to learn French, it's hard for me to understand here where one word ends and another begins. They kind of all seem to go together. And so one way that we can help people with that is to as we're reading these out loud, kind of emphasizing those places that we would normally stress and you know what do I want to say, saying it in phrases so you can see where the breaks are, and that helps people hear not only each individual word but what words are more important. So it actually helps with reading comprehension because they're hearing you stress those words that are probably the nouns or verbs, and the filler words aren't getting as much, you know, attention. So we're gonna just practice that as well here. So today we're going to learn to recognize signs. Recognize signs. Go ahead and repeat, please.
Recognize signs
Of suspicious
of suspicious
or untrustworthy emails
or untrustworthy emails
that could be trying
that could be trying
to steal
To steal
personal information.
personal information.
Great. So today we will learn to recognize signs of suspicious or untrustworthy emails that could be trying to steal personal information. And secondly, we're going to learn to identify signs of emails
of email.
Emails
that may have viruses.
that may have
have
viruses.
Perfect. So we will learn to identify signs of emails that may have viruses. And then lastly, we will learn to delete emails,
Delete emails.
delete emails
from untrustworthy sources.
from
Untrustworthy
untrustworthy sources.
Great. So we will learn to delete emails from untrustworthy sources. So when you have an email account, you may get lots of emails from advertisers. Just like in the regular mail, you get advertisements, same thing happens in email. And in email, these advertisements are called spam. And that was one of our vocabulary words right here, the SPAM. So many of these spam emails come from sources that are not reputable, which means that reputable means the email is from a business or a person you can trust. So it's very important to recognize spam because some spam emails can have viruses. And a virus, just like we have heard about the coronavirus causing us people to get sick with COVID, same thing is true with a computer virus. So a virus is a kind of software that can hurt your computer. And some spam emails can give your computer a virus, or they may try and steal your money. So it's very important that we are able to recognize when an email might be spam. And luckily, spam emails often have signs, clues that help us recognize that it's spam. So some of those clues I'm going to share with you, and we're going to practice them. So here, if we look on the top of my screen where it says common clues, sometimes the spam emails, there's certain topics that spam emails often are about. One of the things that they're often trying to do is trying to sell you something around medicine. So what are some other words for medicine that they might use?
Prescriptions,
Yep, prescription,
drugs,
Healthy
Drugs.
options.
healthy options, yep. Supplements maybe,
supplements.
pills. So important to make sure that students realize that it's not just the word medicine, that it could be anything related to that. Oftentimes they'll be about dating websites. They can also be about amazing jobs with high pay. So I think I just got one, earn, $5,000 in a week from home looking over this material. It seems a little too good to be true, and then it probably is. They'll often be about college degrees, especially online degrees. And again, it will be earn your bachelor degree in 2 years with this online program. They're often about weight loss or diets, and especially if they promise that you're going to lose a lot of weight quickly. They might be about money rewards. There's that old one about the Nigerian prince who has $1 million and he wants to give it to you. You just need to give him your bank account. And they might be about gambling. So now what I want you all to do is on your screen, you should see at the top, you should say you're viewing Theresa's screen or something like that. And then there should be options there. And one should be to let you annotate. It should be like a pencil. So if you find that, if you could just scribble something on my screen so I can see that you found it. Sometimes it's at the bottom of, depending on what device you're using, it could be on the bottom, but it should be somewhere saying, all right, say you're viewing Theresa's screen. There you go. Okay, awesome. And then should say view options or maybe the 3 dots. and sometimes it's at the bottom left. See a couple people found it. Okay, there we go. Anyone not able to do it? On some devices you can't.
When I do the view options, Teresa,
Yeah.
The only thing I have is request remote control.
Okay.
But that would take control from everybody else, wouldn't it?
Right, right.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So like I said, sometimes depending on your device, and maybe Kevin, you know this, but
And I'm on a Chromebook, so sometimes we do get limited. So that's fine. I know how to annotate.
yeah, okay. So all right. So I love seeing all the colors and things that you write. I'm gonna clear your drawings. And now as we look at the spam examples on the bottom in the kind of purple blue, I want you to either circle, underline, star, whatever you want to do, anything that talks about medicines. On the bottom part here. What talks about medicines or related topics? There you go. Zoloft, yep. That one, yeah, about prescription drugs. Diet, maybe, but definitely this bottom one, the prescription drugs. All right, so now I want you to find anything that talks about college degrees in the lower spam examples. Get college degrees at home. Yep, there you go. How about anything that talks about weight loss? Lose 20 pounds in 1 week. Great. All right. And how about money rewards? You just won 1 million. Exactly. All right. Very good. So now looking up at the top again, oftentimes spam will have a lot of capital letters. So not just the first letter of the word, but the whole word will be capitalized. Or they might have exclamation points, you know, like they're shouting at you. Or spelling mistakes. So as you look at this bullet point that says capital letters, where's the spelling mistake? On this spelling, yep, there should be 2 L's. Great. All right, now as we look again at our spam examples below, go ahead and underline or circle all those that you see that are in all capital letters. Today only. You just won 1 million. At home. Keto miracle. Great. All right. Now, how about those that have spelling mistakes? Prescription, yep. See any other? Retrieve. Lip 1 tour here should be Lipitor. All right. So thank you for being the learners here. So mostly I want to show that, you know, there's a lot of interaction that's available in Northstar, whether you're doing this in person or on the screen, and a lot of repetition. So we want to make sure that people are getting the practice to, you know, practicing these skills. So when we look at, when I show you what I was seeing on the lesson plan, oops, go up there. What I was seeing then as a teacher, I didn't have to make a lot of this stuff up. It's already in the lesson plan. It's already in the curriculum. So when I was looking at it, if I go again into that lesson 7, we were looking at in Internet Basics. Weren't we? Or was it using email? using email, lesson 7. So what I saw was, you already saw this first page, but then the warm-up questions were here. The objectives are here for you. The words that I was saying are here. So again, you don't have to remember, or you don't even have to think too much about what you want to say, because it's all here. And then it tells you when you're going to show that reference material I showed you and how you're going to use it. And as we look through this, it goes through a couple of different of you explaining a couple different things. And then there's the option to do things together. So where you model the skill and you have the whole class do it with you. That way you can make sure that people are understanding. So in this case, they're talking about what we just saw, and they're looking again through, are these reputable or not? There'll be a couple of these model and explain pieces. And you can see that, there's the reference material is all here. I'll show you in a second. Then, and there'll be the model and explain, and then do it together. So the class is doing it together. Then if you do have those people who are kind of different, some people are getting it, some people are not yet, you can pair them together to practice more. Then ultimately you'll have something that each person does by themselves. And you'll kind of come together, go over that. We give you the answer keys, and then there'll be vocabulary work that's also explicitly taught. And it ends with the warm up of, are people understanding the information? So if we continue to scroll down, all these reference materials and practice pages are here for you. And you can see that there's just a lot of repetition about how do we recognize spam. Here's about how do we recognize phishing. So it's giving you a lot of practice, giving people a lot of practice. Here's looking at, practicing bad link. How do you know something's a bad link? Looking for spam or phishing emails, how to report them. So all of this is here for you in the lesson. You can do the entire lesson, or you can pick and choose, if you feel like, okay, the group gets it, you can just move on. If you feel they need more time, you can spend more time. You can add in those practice lessons. So and you have, if you've given them the assessment, then you can see which standards you want to work on. I will say that the biggest takeaway in digital literacy that I have heard from students is it's better to go slowly and just cover a little bit of material than to try and get everything in. So if you're finding that people are needing more time, it's better just to keep practicing that skill than kind of rushing to think, well, I got to get this whole lesson done. And in fact, one of my favorite quotes is one of the learners said, well, we don't learn a lot in any class, but what we learn sticks like concrete. And so that was, she was very happy about that, instead of forgetting from class to class. The other thing I want to show you, I want to show you some resources that are really helpful. So Barbara Bush Foundation and Digital Promise created this free guide on working with adults on digital literacy. And then Northstar also contributed to it. And I'll put this in the chat, but it's kind of lengthy, and it does have a lot of theory in it. So, if you're interested in that, it has that. But if you're looking more for kind of practical ways to work with adults, then the best place to start is chapter 5. So this chapter 5, strategies for building digital literacy for the whole learner, that's more the practical how to do it, whereas some of the other chapters are more theoretical. So that's a great resource. If you are working with very low-level digital literacy learners who maybe are at the point where even creating a password is a very difficult thing, there's something called the DART initiative that was created in Texas and is available for free. And it kind of goes through from really basic, like what's an uppercase letter versus a lowercase letter? What is a special character? Kind of really starting out with keyboard basics. And so if that is something that you would find interesting, the best place to go to find it is, here, I'll put this in the chat too. And that's what our newest assessment about the keyboarding skills is, in conjunction with this curriculum that was developed. So we are at our time. Any last comments or questions you all have about as you continue to or go forward to teaching Northstar? Okay. Well, then I want to, first of all, thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing. We are a nonprofit, and our mission is to have as many people, learn digital skills as possible. And of course, we can't do that without people teaching them. So it always makes me feel really good about my job when I meet people who are actually, teaching the skills. So that makes my day. And I hope that you have a great end of the year, any holidays you're celebrating. And if you have any questions, you can go to Mary Jane and you can send them to me, or you can ask them directly to Northstar through the admin portal. Thank you for sitting for 2 hours. It's a long time. I appreciate that, and have a great week.
Bye, everyone.
Lisa,
Bye,
thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Look forward to connecting again.